back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Tangents and Shenanigans. My buddy
Hey,
Jacob is here again. What's up, dude?
hey, what's going on? I'm just pulling up notes for today.
Yes, we are going to need notes. As a matter of fact, I did take a few notes, and I'm just going to go through a couple of like the pre-production and marketing angle of this movie because if you remember, there wasn't really a trailer, like an official trailer for this film. It was just like little like excerpts, and like there was like a short clip of one of the characters' face. I think it was Jason's, who is Rob's brother in the film, and it just had a date like 1/18/08, and that was the release date because this movie came out in 2008. And do you remember like what they did to keep this film under wraps? Because they did a pretty good job.
I don't remember anything about like pre-production. I feel like the only thing I remember is like something about the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
Like
Yeah, the Statue of Liberty's head.
yeah, the Statue of Liberty's head. That's like the only thing I remember about this. Like they didn't tell any. It was like some kind of apocalyptic scenario in New York. That's it.
Mhm.
Like didn't know what it was from. Just like you just saw the head and that was it.
Right. So, leading into that, the I thought it was pretty interesting because um, there was a lot of like ads for products within this film, including one that I'll go into detail as we further on in this discussion. But one of them um, is Slusho, which is a beverage, and you see it in multiple references, and there's like different flavors for it. It's like chocolate rage. There was like a berry flavor, but none of that really matters. But the company that put out the Slusho is called Tegrado, and Tegrado was the company that Rob was VP of marketing for, and he was going to be moving to Japan working for this company.
Okay, because they kept saying, "Oh, you got this VP role and you're going to Japan," and I'm like,
Mhm.
"VP of what, though?" I'm like, "That's a
Right.
little vague." And I'm also like, "How old's this kid? Like 28, and he's a
He
VP?
yeah,
Good
he
for
looked like he
him."
was in mid-20s already VP of a company, like, "What
I'm
are we
like,
doing wrong?"
I'm like, "Good for him." I'm like, "That's whew, that's wild."
That company, there was, like, clips of, Tegrado, like, having, like, an oil rig in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and it was, I should say drilling for oil, but they also came across, and this kind of reminded me a little bit of what BioShock did. um, the company ended up finding this, um it's like seabed nectar is what it was. It's kind of like this yellowish substance, and
Mhm.
they were extracting it from the depth and the cold temperatures and the pressure. They were extracting this, and that's one of the secret ingredients in Slusho because it's highly addicting. It'd kind of be like taurine for us in energy drinks. Like that's the most chemical addicting like property in Monster energy drinks or the Red Bulls and stuff like that. Um, but but anyways, they while they were down there drilling, they ended up finding these like parasites, and the parasites were collecting this nectar. And I'm like, huh, that's oddly familiar of the sea slugs in BioShock. And they were experimenting on the sea slugs and what they were capturing, and that's what they ended up making all of the plasmids and all of the different concoctions down there. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But it also made me think of Underwater's premise because they were drilling at the bottom of the ocean for oil, obviously, and then they came across another amphibious, giant species down there. So that's technically where the creature in Cloverfield, codenamed Clover, um, how that came about. Apparently, they had awoken it, and
S
this whole
well
time, like, I thought it came from space,
Yeah, because
'cause when
I mean, last
but
10 seconds of the film are them being on the Ferris wheel, like, "Oh, we're on the Ferris wheel, yada yada, looking at the beach." And then you just see this thing from the corner of your eye just crash in the ocean. And
right.
then they're like, "I had a great day."
Yep.
Like they didn't even see it. And I'm sitting there going, Okay, if you're saying it's coming from the depths, then what is the whole point of that scene and adding that feature into it? Like that's making me imply that it's coming from space. Like it's some
Well,
kind of, I
I
I
mean,
can get maybe that it lands and then it finds whatever you're talking about and it gets all big and whatever crazy, but why would that whole final scene then just becomes irrelevant or it just adds so much contradictory to it? Because I'm like,
well,
what's the point of that?
well, I think through explanation, what actually fell was a satellite that was owned by Tiguardo, the Japanese company, and that had crashed into the ocean, and that's what we saw at the end of the film. So, and again, that kind of coincides with where the location of the oil rig was built, the Choi station. Um, and again, all of this happens before the actual film, right? Before all of these events take place. Um, and then one of the other things I was going to say was something I thought was pretty funny is right before the release of the film, each of the characters from the movie, or at least several of the characters in the movie, had their own MySpace page. So this was technically coined as like the MySpace monster.
Oh, Jesus.
It's so funny,
Yeah.
dude.
Good luck
When
trying to get on
MySpace was a
MySpace
thing.
now.
Um, well, okay. So going back to the beginning of the film, we're talking about Cloverfield, and by all means, we are going to be talking spoilers if you haven't already noticed. Um,
Yeah, not a very looking at this cast, not a very recognizable cast except for TJ Miller. He's in Kaplan. Those are the only two that really stick out to me in terms of like
what
ensemble for this.
one of the guys that plays Travis, I believe, he played in a few. That's his character's name. I forget the actor's name. Travis is the one that ends up going to the party with
As the
Beth.
boyfriend.
Yeah, as the new boyfriend or the date. Um, but the way this film opens up is um, it's a found footage film, and it starts with like U.S. property, government, and then it leads into like a clip of Rob and Beth.
I think it's her apartment.
Oh, it's her apartment. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
her
That's right. It's the
apartment
same place.
and the whole time I'm trying to figure out like what is the time frame between this first footage versus him leaving? And I think it wasn't until like a certain like maybe half hour in that I think it's like 2, 3 weeks prior
Right.
to yeah.
Because they end up talking about it at the party. So leading up to the party, the main characters, we have Rob and Jason, who are brothers. Rob, we know, had a fling with Beth, and Jason, Rob's brother, is with Lily, who is planning this whole going away party for Rob before he goes to Japan. So it's kind of like a farewell party,
Which
and they're
good on him for doing that, but also, I mean, there's not much, other than the fact that there's been characters introduced. His brother's kind of a piece of shit.
he kind
Like
of is.
he brought his like ex fling, like maybe his ex. I don't want to say girlfriend, but like he brought Beth to this with the boyfriend, knowing that they probably had some kind of like history. And I'm like, why would you do that to your brother? Like you're going away party. It's like let me bring like probably the one that's gonna make this the most awkward situation ever.
I,
Like,
I mean, but to their detriment, I don't think a lot of them knew, except for Lily, because I think Lily's the one that knew, and then Lily told Jason and Hud,
oh, that's right.
and this is what I think is so
But why is
funny.
Lily still saying, "Hey, you should bring her"? Like, no, no, don't bring her with her new fling. Come on, man. You could tell he's just like, what the fuck? Like,
This this is what I thought was kind of funny is they give so Lily wants to like document this whole experience, so she gives the camera duties to Jason, and Jason's like, I'm not fucking doing this, and he finds Hud, TJ Miller, and again, uh TJ Miller, like I before this movie, do you remember him in anything?
no. I think the movies I remember him are after this movie. I think this is where, but I mean, he barely shows up. Like like in terms of like his face. So it's you're more
Sure,
hearing him, and then I think that's probably like a combination, maybe like 5 minutes total that he's like on camera. Like most of
that's
the time,
true.
he's just kind of spewing like dialogue and adding commentary to the whole thing.
Yeah, and
He
it
was a great cast pick though. I think he was fantastic.
I think he was too, and you know, bringing up Underwater again, like he was one of my favorite characters in that movie too, because he also played the comic relief. So in this one, it's like, what I found out is, you know, because he is the cameraman for the duration of for the film, and even though he was trying to make like a video doc for the party, events that led after that, he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to document. People need to know what happened here, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, no, you got a point, you got a point. Um, but anyway, so Jason gives the camera duties to HUD, and he's like, "Hey, like I hear you're gonna be so cool, and look, I heard Marlene is gonna be here." And you see a little like glow in his face. He's like, "Oh, she is." He's like, "Yeah, man, she's gonna think you're so cool," and blah 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 blah. And so
Yeah,
then
it's just being creepy and a shitty friend too, because he's like, "Hey
so
guys, do you know that so and so had sex with Beth?"
right, but yeah
I'm
yeah
like,
yeah.
"Who fucking does this?"
It was so funny because the way it leads up into that is like once Head gets the camera and they talk with Lily and Jason, they go into the hallway or do they go to the fire escape?
It's the hallway.
It's the hallway, right?
Yeah.
The fire escape scene comes later.
Fire
Um,
escape is after where she leaves, and then they're kind of talking, and
yep.
he's like kind of being like, I'm going to Japan, and it was just this, and like it's the classic like 12 a.m. bro talks. Someone's super drunk, and they're just having feelings come pouring out, and and that's kind of ensuing, and I don't want to get to because I know what comes right during this scene, so I don't know what
Right.
else you want to
We'll
add.
wait for that.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
wait, but like, there's one like thing about this scene that I thought like was really interesting. But we'll get to that in a sec.
Okay. So once HUD gets the camera, he starts going around and getting people's like confessions, like, hey, like what do you want to say to Rob? And you know, they're all saying their salutations and you know, farewells and whatnot. And then once HUD finds that information about Rob and Beth, how they had a fling, he's like, hey, did you guys hear about Rob and Beth? Did you guys hear about Rob and Beth? Going around the whole party. And they're like, no. I remember like some of the reactions of some of these people. Remember that one guy with like the reddish, like curly hair? Uh he's
Yeah.
like he's kind of like, whoa, like, what's up? And he's like, oh man, just saying hi. He's like, and the camera's like up in his face, like, what's up? Cuts over to where HUD sees Marlena, and he's like, oh, okay. And he's like checking himself. He's like hyping himself up to go talk to her, and then he goes to talk to her, and she seems like super like uninterested. She's on her phone. She's already distracted. She's like, oh hey, you know, good luck to you and your job, and you know, you got a big move, and you're a VP like that. You know, good for you, good for you. And HUD's like, okay, well, I guess I'll catch up with you later. And then she just like leaves. And then shortly after that is when Beth and her
Beth
date
shows
come
up.
through the door, right?
And Travis.
Yeah, and Travis. And and then that's when because
Poor Travis. Poor Travis.
Rob is already there, right? At this point.
Uh, yes, Rob's there. Yeah, Beth shows up after,
Hmm.
like late, like after they've already been announced. That's right.
Yeah, the party's already been going on, and they just happen to show up fashionably late.
Mhm.
And then it automatically like causes a stir in Rob, and you can see that, and HUD's like capturing like his reaction, and then that's when it leads to them on the fire escape, right?
Well, they have their kind of headbutt, and they have an argument in the hallway, and then she actually does like a goodbye video, which is pretty awkward for both of them. And then I think something comes up where he wants to talk to her, and then she just kind of leaves, and then that's when they go into the fire escape and start talking about it.
Yeah, because he kind of feels defeated because he's like, you know, we had a moment together, and now you're bringing this guy to my going away party. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
Um, and you know, and I think that's kind of to Rob's character. Like, I mean, if this happened to you, like, yeah, like I can see a little bit of that disdain, especially if you see that someone else has moved on. But if nothing else was established or like concrete, like, hey, we're going to be exclusive, then you can't really get mad if it's not conveyed, right?
Mhm.
You know?
No, you have to set it. You have to set up that relationship because basically it's going to drive the plot of this
Hmm.
whole movie. Like, and it's going to solidify any kind of motivation. of why they're doing it. Now, it doesn't solidify the motivation of some of the characters of why they're doing this, but it's the primary motivator for driving this plot. So they have to set it up, or else, and if they didn't create that kind of dynamic, then this film would, to be honest, would be a lot weaker because everyone would just be questioning it. Like everyone would just be like, "Why are you doing this? Like this makes no sense. Like we don't give a shit about this person."
Yeah.
They're getting a lot done in these, like they're doing a lot of setup, and they're doing a really good job of like moderating it so that it doesn't feel forced.
Mhm.
And so a lot of that setup, because this movie it's like what, an hour 15 minutes. There's a
Yeah, it's
lot.
like it's under that hour and a half mark.
It's a pretty short film, which means and I totally forgot when I was like watching it, going like, wow, we're already halfway through. It feels like we just started. Like, so there's a lot of, it's quick and there's a lot of things going on. Um, Not in terms of like world building or the story. It's
Or
very plot heavy,
yeah,
but it's just a lot. Like it's just a lot of inflow, a lot of action scenes, a lot of fast pace, a lot of things to kind of catch up on, which they do a good job of like really narrowing down, like this is what you need to know before this event happens, and then this is how this is going to go. They're not going to waste any time with like other crazy subplots. They're very natural, where you're good like,
yeah.
oh, he likes her, and it's all like, I like this person and I want to hang out with them, and then it becomes very beat for beat until there's a scene that comes up. But anyway, that's a lot of tangents on that. They're at the fire escape. They're talking about Rob's
Beth.
talking about Bev, and one of the things that immediately sets the tone for this film, for the rest of this film, is it doesn't do the classic Hollywood like build up where you can kind of feel something coming, where the way they like present dialogue and scenes, there are a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of build up so you emotionally get ready. They
Mhm.
just instantly, an earthquake happens, all the lights go out. They're like, what the hell's going on? Okay, let's go on the roof. What's the deal here? And it just starts popping. Like it just starts moving.
Now, before we move on, do you remember when we first watched this film together?
I remember us watching it together. I don't know where and when it was.
It was at your house. We had it. I think it was like recorded, and we were like super stoked to watch it. And
Mm.
then we get to that fire escape scene right before like everything happens, and we had to end it for whatever reason. Like I had to go or dinner had started. Something had like prevented us from watching the rest of this movie. So we weren't able to finish it until I don't remember how much time had passed, but we ended up like being able to finish watching it at a later date. But it just sucked because we were like left on that cliffhanger. It's like there's an earthquake and everything's happening. Like, what's about to happen? Like, no, this is the best part. Anyways, it was really fun watching it, and I do remember that when this movie came out in theaters, a lot of people had reservations of the way it was filmed, and a lot of people got sick, like motion sickness from the shaky
Shaky
cam. Do you
camera.
remember that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that, but I could see it because there were some scenes where it just was all. And you know what's wild is I think that there's films that came out after this that do it worse and with a bigger budget.
Oh, for sure. With a bigger
Where
budget.
Yeah, with a
Yeah.
bigger budget, which I'm just like, how could
How?
you how could you mess that up? Like,
No, honestly, like shaky cam is not bad. I'd rather have shaky cam than have multiple cuts within one scene where you don't even know what the characters are doing, especially in a combat scene. It's like how many scene like in what is it in Taken 3? How many cuts does it
yeah,
take for Liam Neeson to jump over a fence? Really?
that's the
Really?
classic like meme, the classic meme one where they just cut so many times. It's like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we wasting
Um
our time?
And like one of the other things, before moving on, is this movie. It was directed by Matt Reeves, and assisting him was J.J. Abrams. And not once do we see a solar flare in this, do we?
You know what? I wish J.J. Abrams just did these kind of films because he would be perfect. Like
Um, but I
he
guess
just
that
needs
was
to
the
take a step back.
inspiration to this film. Was J.J. Abrams and his son went on a trip to Japan, and they're both like big fans of Godzilla. I mean, who's
Uh,
not?
they're like, what's
And
America's Godzilla?
well, they were in like this toy shop, an anime shop, and they were looking at all the creatures, and J.J. Abrams like sparked the idea, like, you know what, like like America needs their own monster. Like we can make our own monster inspired by these kaiju that Japan are all about. And I that was one of the inspirations to this film being made. And what's funny is like one of the films recent to date of Matt Reeves that we both love is the like one of the best Batman versions, right?
Mhm.
He did a pretty good job at filming the Batman with Robert Pattinson. I really did enjoy that.
Well, and
Uh,
you know what's so funny is when they revamped Godzilla in 2015, one of the monsters, like the opposing monsters to Godzilla, and that
The Muto.
Muto looks just like this thing.
I
Like it
know,
looks really similar.
I know.
And,
It's
and
kind of funny, isn't it?
I'm like, did they go like, let's take that thing from Cloverfield and just add Godzilla with it, and then we'll make it an American film.
Let's give it more powers.
Let's give it more powers now. Oh my god. But
Oh man.
yeah.
Okay, but going back to the film, lights are out, everyone's freaking out, and they're like, "Oh, let's go to the roof. Let's see what's going on." So they make it their way to the roof, and then they see like these explosions off in the distance, and like, "Oh shit, we have to get to the street. Like something's going down." And at this point, you don't know if it's a creature film or not. Like you just think like it's maybe this is an attack. Maybe we're being
And
attacked.
and you know what my brain instantly thought of is
Hmm.
I bet you they took a lot of inspiration from 9/11.
Ooh, possibly.
I actually think that because just from that comment right there is the confusion of we don't know what's going on, but there's something wrong going on.
Yeah.
There is a documentary that's probably I don't want to say favorite because I don't enjoy watching them, but I think it's the best documentary about 9/11, which is from two French brothers who were, initially doing a documentary on a rookie firefighter.
Uh-huh.
And the whole joke of the documentary is that these fire like he didn't have any fires the whole summer, so they're just having him film like doing dishes and just cleaning and training, and they're like, this is a poor documentary. And his first fire was the 9/11 fire, but it was one of the brothers went in the tower and then the other one was like street side right next to it, and it's showing kind of like the stages of that event transpiring. And
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of that energy and tone is very similar to like the first half hour of this, and I think that they did a great job. If we got to interview them, and I hope that they would say that that's where they got some of this from because it's a very real, easy source material. It's not a favorable one. Like obviously we have to be sensitive to that, but it really like we'll talk about this more, but there's parts that like freaked me out when I was watching this again last night, like even 15 years later. So I'm excited to talk about those, but yeah, it's them just like having this general confusion of like what's going on earthquake, and then I'll let you continue because I think there's what like an explosion.
Yeah, there's an explosion, but I think one of the things of this film is the fact that you feel like you're there with them.
Hmm.
Like you naturally feel like you're like running along with them, and you're like just behind the camera view makes you feel more immersed, I guess you would say, because you're not getting like a bird's eye view. You're not really getting um I mean, you kind of getting close-up shots, but you're not really getting the whole picture. A lot of stuff is happening and the camera has to react. It's like, "Oh, what was going on over there? Oh, what's going on over here?" So you don't really get to see the full picture.
They do
And
supplement that with the news.
mhm,
They will show him like news articles to kind of give you a little breather from that angle, which is smart because I'd be a little like over just the first person view if that was the only view. They have times where they show the television and then being like, "What is that? Oh my god, that's crazy." But that's not till
yeah,
later. The first half hour of this is all first person view because it's still
it's
like it's that mystery, it's that isolated like perspective. And
the
then as it transpires, you start getting larger and like more answers.
the build up to this is almost similar to like Jaws, how they don't show the whole thing until like close to the end. So it's all about like that intrigue, like that suspense. Like what is it?
I'll give it credit though. It does show it like halfway through because there's a scene where you clearly see what this thing is.
Mhm.
Um, but like they don't do it where like you know what type of attack this is after maybe 15 minutes of this first earthquake, which I was like, okay, because there's some movies that would just they would have just dragged that. They would have as long as they could have. Where you're just like, what are we even dealing with? What's going on? And so I like that, like, you clearly know by one scene, like, oh, this is what this type of attack is. Okay. All
Yeah.
right, now this is what we're dealing with. Um, and even what was it? Even HUD's character starts like insinuate like giving hints at that. So you kind of like don't completely keep your audience in the dark because they kind of need to know what they're dealing with.
Help me out. So when they leave the roof, they go down the stairwell and then they make it to the street level, right?
Well, because a freaking explosion happens that creates this like almost meteor shower effect. And
That's
they're just
right.
like, we need to run, which I'm like, oh shit, run. And they just start because they're like, we need to get out of the building and then the street. And that's when the Statue of Liberty face or head slides up on the
Starts
street.
tumbling down. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, starts tumbling down. And
And everyone's just like shocked, and they're like looking at it like, "What the fuck?"
and again, you see that kind of scene, and you start seeing people covered in like debris and dust, and that's where like my 9/11 reference is making me be like, I feel like you definitely because you could take a snap for snap photo, and that's what that would look like.
It,
But
even more so when they see like the debris like falling in the background and this plume of smoke heading their way, they take refuge in that little convenience store. And meanwhile, like HUD is yelling Rob like a billion times, Rob, 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 Rob.
I think that's like the one line that we remember from that film.
It's I don't know how many times he says it. Can you imagine having a drinking game to this movie every time Rob's name is mentioned? You would not survive. You would
You
not
wouldn't even
survive.
get you wouldn't get across the Brooklyn Bridge.
A mere mortal man will not survive that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so once they're in the convenience store, like all the debris like goes past them and they see it this just, like plume of like dust and dirt just goes past the windows. And that's when that's I think what you were implying is that's when HUD was like, Rob, Rob, I saw it. And it's like no one asks, what did you see? Nobody asks HUD, what did you see? They don't cover that.
Well, because they're not thinking it's something. They're thinking it's an event. Like, oh,
Yeah.
an earthquake caused an explosion. They're not there's no reason for
Yeah,
them
because
to
no
think
one
that it's a
says, "Oh, I
monster.
saw the earthquake. I saw it."
Yeah, I saw it. It's like, you don't see an earthquake, idiot. No, so, I could see their skepticism behind that. Or going through the camera, I think 'cause he kinda shows the camera a bit of what's going on, like, in terms of,
He's
like,
trying to
I
play
think
it back, right?
yeah, he, like, plays it back for them, and then they're like, "We need to get out of here, like, we need to get, out of Manhattan," so they all just kinda go, "Okay, we gotta go to the Brooklyn Bridge, let's go do it," and, big, cops, first responders are, um, guiding them back, and you start seeing people, like, on there's, like, little med tents where they start treating people,
Yeah.
um, and, they kinda just keep going, they get to the bridge, a bunch of people are going, and, it's I like the detail of it's first responders and firefighters, like, giving direction. Like, it's not there's not that much military yet. Like, that they didn't couldn't react that fast because you don't even know what half this stuff is. And so it's first responders, they're kind of pushing them out, they're talking about it. And what was it? The brother Jason kind of goes up a little bit ahead, and Rob stays because his phone goes off, and Beth calls him while he's on the bridge, which fuck, I'm
Mhm.
surprised he got service. I'm
Right,
surprised he
right.
was able to get service.
And then shortly after that, as Rob is like kind of like delayed back, Jason's way up ahead, and HUD's like looking at Jason, and you hear Lily in the background like, Jason, 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 look out! And then all of a
And
sudden you see like this giant fucking thing. And at first it looks like a tentacle,
yeah,
but I'm guessing it's one of the arms of the creature that just like slashes down on the bridge and makes it collapse. And we see Jason like we don't necessarily see him fall, but obviously he's in where all the wreckage is. So it's like no, he's done. First death of our companions is right here.
yeah. So
Poor
they're
Jason.
like, oh, and then and again, it's a little blindsiding. Like there's not really any buildup. It's just kind of back and forth. You're maybe kind of going, all right, we're just sitting here. What's going on? And then this like tail or leg just collapses that section of the bridge. And man, if you had this film today, Jason would miraculously come back
Oh, for
because
sure.
he just kind of he just goes, he's gone. Like it's
If it
not.
was if it was directed by Disney, they would find a way to bring Jason back and say, "No, he held onto the bridge as it was falling and landed in the water and then just swam to shore. No
Man,
problem.
if it was
Check it
directed
off."
by like anyone nowadays, it's but yeah, like and that I think that was something that not that it in terms of aging, but me like the differences of Hollywood now, my brain's like, oh, you'd have to show him that he's like dead, or else people are just gonna think he's gonna come back. But no, like this movie was just like, oh nope, he's gone. We're moving on.
Yeah,
We don't have time. We're not gonna bring this character back, which is a big shock to everyone. And it's definitely reaffirms like, okay, you're being under attack by something. Like now, how are you gonna get out of it? And
right.
it's, whew, that was. I mean, it kind of it catches you off guard a little bit.
And I would imagine that the National Guard is called in at soon after seeing that because it's being broadcast on news, like on news bands, like what you were saying when it cuts to the news segments, like that's an actual clip of the limb coming down on the bridge.
Oh my
And
gosh, I have a I have there the actress who plays Lily,
yeah,
she so like a minute I have just a funny note about this. The they get off the bridge and she says this line and I wish we had watched it together because I feel like we would have
oh god,
quoted this. She executes this line I don't think very well. I was not convinced that she
was it
was
just a
dead.
bad line read? What was it?
She just goes, "Oh no." What was it? She's like, "Oh no, Jason." And I'm like, "What?"
I do
She's
remember
like, "I
that.
can't believe." She goes, "Oh no, Jason." And I'm like, "Whew." I'm like, "All right, that
Out of
was."
all the cuts, that was the one they went with.
We went with that one. All right, we went with. Okay, all righty then. Okay. And then at that point, they are starting to get that's where they're kind of giving you a break from the first person camera because Rob goes into the electronics store and HUD follows him and starts looking at all the televisions playing the news.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's where you start learning more like about what this monster is. So that's where I'm like, it is a little mysterious, but by this point you see what it is, and then you see what it's also bringing to the table. So it's
Mhm.
not just him; it's the things that's spawning off of him.
The parasites, right.
Are they parasites? Like,
They were confirmed as parasites, and they would drop off, I guess, once I don't really know the lore of it, but it seemed that they would only drop off if organic matter was present, because then they would try to bite it, and then what happens? Well, we'll get into that later, but
well, there's some
um,
monster concepts where like if you shoot like damage a piece of flesh, and that flesh comes off as one of with a parasite, and that comes off. But that's speculative. That could not be the case.
yeah, because a lot of the conventional weapons that are used on this beast don't seem to work at all. Like it just kind of like deflects off of it. Like it's taking machine gun fire, it's taking anti-tank rounds, it's taking explosive rounds, it's even
It's
taking
taking
like
bomber rounds.
yeah, it's taking like rockets, and then there's like bombardment scenes later in the film, and that seems to do like the most damage, as kind of like it like leaves its like burning body a little bit, but it doesn't really seem to affect the creature as much just due to its sheer size. And the
Yeah.
other thing is that this version Clover is supposed to be like a baby version, and I know that's what's kind of weird because it's like 300 feet tall, so like how is this a baby?
How's this a
What's the
baby,
mom?
dude?
But it kind of makes sense when it goes on land because it's kind of confused. It's just going around. It doesn't start like attacking buildings until much later in the film, after it's been attacked so much. But from the from the store, Rob has to go to get like a charger for his phone, right? Because he's trying to like listen to the voicemail.
Hmm.
So once he finds a charger and HUD looking at these television screens, Rob like goes through his voicemail, listens to it, and then he's like, "Go save Beth. Like she's in the apartment. Like I have to go. Like you guys go to safety. but I'm going. And
Mhm.
Lily and Hud are like, well, we're not going to leave you. Like, we're just going to go with you. And then after
Marl
that, they end
and
up going.
Marlena comes too, which I'm sitting there going, "Why?
Why would she have gone with them? That's the other thing. She didn't
Why
seem
are
that
you?"
interested in the first place.
Yeah, I'm sitting there going, "Why are you going?" Like, I just that was one of the first kind of like, plot challenges I had is I'm like, "Why is she going?" Like, she has, like, little attachment. Like, if anything, she wants to get out quicker, and because she just saw someone, she'd be like, "Why?" At least have opposition of like, "Hey, this thing's killing people. We need to leave." Like, she could probably be dead, and we'll probably die getting there. And maybe she says that. I don't remember, but like, I'm immediately going, "Why are you going?" I
Yeah.
don't get
I mean,
it.
yeah, because if there was like, I feel like if her character was written to be a love interest for Hud, and that was to be like established, other than just Hud liking her,
Mm,
then that would have made more sense for her being there. But I think you're right. I think it was just situationally. She saw them moving and going, so it's like I'm gonna go with you guys. Like fuck it, you guys seem to know where you're going.
yeah. So
Um, and then, do you remember like when they're going through that alleyway? Shortly afterwards, they run into that one. They run into that one person,
that like
and he's like
Russian dude
speaking
who's like
Spanish
trying
to
to.
them.
I thought it was Russian.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I thought he was speaking Russian, and he was just like, I don't," and it clearly is him being like, "Don't go this way.
Yeah,
I just came from there.
he's
Go
like
the
trying to.
other way."
He's like holding Hud's shoulder. He's like, "Don't do this. Don't go that way." And it's
And
like,
he's like, I gotta go. My friends are leaving me."
it's like cool story, bro. I'm gonna go this way. And
And
then once they get out of that alley, is it's all quiet in the street, and all of a sudden the National Guard comes in, or the army, and they just start firing, and they're like, what the fuck? And Rob, Hud, and Marlena and Lily, they're all like ducking for cover, and that's when you see the close-up image of the monster like looking down at them, and then rushing past. It's like, oh fuck.
this is my
Like,
favorite scene of this movie.
it's one of the greatest scenes, right?
It's
It establishes the threat
the
right in the
sound
face.
design. Yeah, the sound design and the just the overall layout of this scene
Mhm.
is so intense and stressful. And I was like, I was really like unnerved and scared. Like I'm sitting there. It just really, I don't know, it freaked me out. Like the sound design, like kind of creeped
The
me out.
way
Like
it the way it roars, it's
the
not
way
like
it,
a bellowing roar, it's like a screeching roar.
yeah, and it felt like they did a really good job of capturing like the raw noises of like gunfire, tanks, missiles, explosions. Like it didn't Hollywoodize it. It didn't like kind of muffle it. It really brought those kind of
You're
impacts out.
you're right, because you hear the treads moving on the street,
It was
and you hear the bullet casings hitting the ground. Like, dude, I'm with you. I'm
and
with you.
it's affecting the mic on the camera because even when HUD is like yelling, it's kind of like cutting like his volume because it's such a high intense pitch. It really disturbed me. It was really intense, and I was just like, maybe it's as an adult, like I don't know, maybe as a kid you're like, whoa, this would be so crazy, but like me as an adult watching this, I'm like, this is terrifying. Like I'm dead. Like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Like this
There's no
is,
surviving it. You just
and I
hide somewhere.
and I think what's also what makes it a little scary too is the military, like, I'm not going to say they don't come off as unprofessional. They come off like a little bit desperate, if that makes any sense. Like they're not like doing this cover and they're not like they look like they're just going throw everyone in. Just throw everyone in,
Throw
hope
everything
someone
you
hit,
have at it.
throw
Yeah.
everything you it comes that, and it makes it come off kind of desperate, which then kind of takes your confidence of like control out of the situation because a lot of times they kind of correctly so perceive the military as being like kind of a control entity, and
Mhm.
so they'll use tactics and strategy to like give that perception of like, oh, this is going on, but like the military's got a plan and they're doing this and this and this. That scene makes them look like they just totally threw out all protocol and they're just like, you got a weapon, just go over there and just hope that you can hit something.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh god, it just really that it really, I put so many notes about how much that freaked me out. It was really really creepy.
Well, like, what do you do as well? Like, when you realize like the threat that you're facing, and you know that like none of your weapons are working, like what do you do? No, there's no like there's no newsroom, there's no situation room happening in a scene outside of where these main characters are. You don't know if they're making like a grand plan to eliminate this threat.
Mhm.
They're just kind of piecing it together as it unfolds in front of them, very pragmatically. And so like after this huge scene and reveal of the monster, um the companions like end up making their way to like the subway tunnel, and then they kind of like take refuge in there. And HUD is then asking like we need to go, like we can't stay here. And Rob's just there like, well, I'm just gonna wait for a lull, and then I'll go to save Beth. And it's like, do you understand what's going on out there? Like there's not gonna be a lull. What do you mean? What are you talking about? What do you mean?
They give you kind of, because it's a really intense scene, and it's just a lot going on, and there's a lot being thrown at you, and they do the smart thing where they go underground, but they also do the smart thing for the audience where they're like, okay, we're gonna give you like a few minutes to process what you just saw, and
Yeah, a
like kind
breather.
of get you ready for the next stage of the story, or this plot. And so that's kind of where they're all, because there's just, since the explosion, it's been go, 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 Rob, Rob, Rob. Oh my God, look at this, look at this. And so you just, as an audience, will just get exhausted. Like, and this was great, but like you couldn't do that back to back again. Like you would just kind of you would lose the value of that scene because you would just get burnt out. So they
Mhm.
give you like a good 5 minutes of like people emotionally processing, dialogue to be for character building. What was it? Rob calls his mom, tells him about Jason, because yeah, your fucking
Yeah.
brother died, and your mom's going, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And he's like, "I'm fine," which is clearly lying. And then he's like, "Hey, Jason didn't make it," and it shows his kind of emotional side. So it does a lot with, again, it's doing a lot with a little, and this isn't like a groundbreaking script, but it's doing the necessary things so that you can value and have kind of a diverse screenplay.
And you feel like they actually are like real characters that
Mhm.
could portray like humans having like those emotions. Like even though all the stressful thing is going on, we still have to take a moment to like value what you just lost. And this scene gives us that.
Mhm.
Because they could have easily just been like, okay, we're gonna go to Beth. Like this is what we're doing. But no, he takes that opportunity to. I mean, it sucks, but like you do see a little bit of emotion coming from Rob, um, but it's not a whole lot to process because you still know that you can't stay here. Like you need to keep moving.
Has that
And
urgency because he knows that she's in trouble, like in
right,
terms of like life threatening.
right. So it's one of those situations of understanding, even though you just lost your brother, there's another life that you could potentially save if you have the opportunity to do so. Would you do it? And Rob definitely wants to do that for Beth. And it also like coincides with whatever they had maybe meant a little bit more to Rob than it did to Beth, possibly. You could definitely tell that Rob was not comfortable leaving without Beth.
Yeah, absolutely. He wasn't going to do it.
And then once they get back to the surface, um, no, they don't get
No,
back to
they
the
they
surface,
don't.
right?
They decide, hey, we need to go through the tunnels.
That's right. It's like it's safer to stay underground. Let's just go through. The trains aren't going to be going right now,
Yeah,
so we'll just walk through the tube. And then as they're doing this, Marlena and HUD have a little bit of a moment, right?
yeah. They do the
Um,
classic quip about superheroes where he's like, wait, you know what Superman is? And she's like, wait, do you
are
not
you
know
aware
who
of
Super?
Garfield?
Are you aware of Garfield? It's like,
Like, what a jump! What a jump!
well, she's probably just like, yeah, I'm a person, not just some girl. Come on, like,
She's being sarcastic, and I fucking love it.
yeah. And then
Um,
obviously, and they're walking, and you can already kind of like, you're just sitting there going, okay, like, yeah, we're underground, but I don't think we're safe. And then all the rats start going one direction, and
HUD's like,
that's
that's not good.
that's universal sign that if the rats are going, you don't want to be where they're coming from. And then they finally turn the night vision on, and they start seeing the spawn behind them, and then they're like, you just need to run, like, and I it's actually
That
like,
scene was pretty freaky too,
well, because HUD doesn't tell them what it is. They just run, just run, like, just run. And like, I bet you half of them are like, what are we fucking running from?
because what HUD sees once he turns on the night vision is he like sees the glowing eyes of the parasites on the ceiling,
And
and they're just
yeah,
like, yeah, and they're stalking them. It's like, oh fuck. And as they're running, one of the parasites like runs up to them and then even like attacks. Doesn't the parasite like attack HUD at first, and
it
then
does, but it doesn't injure him. It just knocks him over. Same with I think someone else, but it does get was it Marlena like helps HUD and then it bites Marlena like in the back.
yeah, in the back shoulder, the right shoulder.
Yeah.
She's like beating it with like this. It's not this bat, but it's like this piece of like
Like
rebar
metal.
or pipe
Yeah.
that she finds, and she's just like going to town on it. And then that's when, yeah, that's when it like latches onto her, and it's like, oh fuck, not Marlena. And and so finally they're able to get use like an access door through the tunnel. And then they end up don't they end up making their way into like a shopping mall or a
Well, yeah,
store?
so they go into a break room where they're, kind of, HUD kind of has this like, "Hey, thank you for helping me out. I appreciate it." And you get a look at those gashes, which I'm like, "You need medical attention. That is a deep wound."
Yeah,
And
seriously, you're not stitching that together.
the one line that I do remember that he says is he goes, "Well, we could either die here, die in the streets, or die in the tunnels." And then they kind of just move on to the shopping center, which I totally forgot that that was a thing. Like in subways, it's like, oh yeah, they have like a little shopping mall, like in the subway station. I didn't know like Manhattan had that, but
I didn't either. I thought that was only a thing in Japan.
yeah,
You
I
can
was
get really
like,
good unagi don.
yeah, I know. I was like, what's with this weird shopping mall? But then obviously you could take it away that it's not really a shopping mall at that point.
No, so, they're making their way through and they see, like, some light, coming from one end of the store, and they're like, "Oh, let's like, what's going on over here?" And then they get intercepted by, the National Guard personnel, and they're like, "What are you guys doing?" Like,
This is a lot of exposition dump too. They kind of dump a lot of like key necessary plot points that are going to need to come up, especially after like Beth. They kind of are like, hey, you have till 0600 to like get out, and we're probably going to level the place, and like this is what's going on, and you can't be here. We need to escort you out. Lots of exposition, like lots of
but
necessary exposition.
but even before that, dude, before that's even announced, like, the National Guard personnel, like, look at Marlena, and they see that she's, like, now bleeding from, like, the eyes,
Well,
and
they
her
start,
mouth's
yeah,
open.
they start giving her like they start doing some dialogue, and then she just goes, "I don't feel good," and then she's got like bleeding eyes, and the nurse runs up, which I'm kind of laughing because I think they kind of over exaggerated. She's like, "Oh my god, she's got a bite," and everyone's like, "Oh shit!" And the
Yeah.
hazmat people come out, and I'm like, "All right, I'm assuming that like she's not the first one that you've
Nope.
seen get bit." Like I
Nope.
know, like I don't know why we're screaming this on the top of our lungs, like I don't know. Medical
I guess
personnel don't talk like that. Like
it's for effect, it's
it
for
is.
us to be scared of what's gonna happen, but then we end up seeing the medical personnel, like, respond to Marlena, and then they bring her behind a tent, or
Yeah,
bring her
like a
behind, like,
quarantine tent.
the tent, and then HUD is like, "Marlena, Marlena, no!" And then shortly after, you just see, like, the silhouette and shadow of her, like you would in, like, an Austin Powers film,
Yeah.
and then, and then you just see her like combust. She just explodes. It's like, what the fuck just happened? I'm like, she was my
It's
favorite,
like
and
some
now
shit
she's
out of
dead.
Alien. And again, it's just another one. It's like, yeah, we're gonna fucking kill off characters, and we don't care.
They're not holding any punches. So, R.I.P. Jason and Marlena. And then that's when the heavy exposition of saying, like, look, nothing we throw at this thing is effective. We're gonna level the place in Central Park at 0600. Like, you have until then to get out. And this is when I thought, like, they're civilians. They don't get a chance if the National Guard is saying you're getting on a chopper, like you're getting out of here. I don't think you have a say in the matter of no, I'm going to stay. Actually,
I
that part
think
I
that
didn't think
yeah, I
was
think they're using the
weird.
like kind of panic of the situation to be like, we don't have the resources to like hold you back. Like you're gonna just do this anyway. Like whatever. Like we got other people we gotta deal with. Like
Hmm.
you're not the last person one here. And so I think they just kind of were like, rather than like fighting you when we have something else we gotta fight, like go do your thing. Like I don't care. Like I get it. And so it's a bit of a stretch, but I think they're kind of weighing on the kind of hysteria of the situation and just the
Mhm.
chaos that like kind of gives them that little like freebie to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, yeah, they get the exposition. They finally get out, and they're still processing, Marlena dying. But what I want to fucking know, and I'm trying to remember what part this happens at. Is it
Tell me.
the horse in the carriage? Is that after Beth, or is that after this scene?
I think it's after this scene because the streets have already been,
Yeah, it
like,
is.
cleared.
Yeah, like what was the point of that? What was
I
the
think
point of
just to
having an empty
show
carriage and a horse? Just
I don't know, symbolically, I don't know, I mean, we can take jabs at it if you really wanted to, but I do know what you're talking about. I think it's just to, like, present instead of, like, showing, like, a tumbleweed in town as if it's, like, deserted. I think this is a way of showing, like, in the city, like, the horse-drawn carriage, even though there's no one riding it, like, this will still go on, like, the horse will still walk aimlessly because it has nothing else to do. I don't know what really to say about that.
I mean, it
That's a
could be
good
those
point.
classic tropes where like there's a bunch of chaos and like a war zone, and then they show like
I
a
think it's just to
image
take
of
you
like
out
a
of the moment.
child or like an old person just like not really reacting, like kind of in
Yeah.
shell shock themselves. Maybe I don't know, like another version of that.
I think it could also work as just, like, taking you out of the moment briefly, which it does for HUD because he lingers on that horse for a while.
Hmm.
So, I don't know, maybe that's what it is. Um But then they're making their way to Beth's apartment, and then they end up seeing, Beth's apartment, like, leaning over on another apartment, and they're like, "Oh, shit, that's where we have to go."
Hmm.
Like, we have to go up there, and then, they finally make their way up, and then they have to, like, once they get past the stairwell, they get to, like, an open window where they jump over to the adjacent building, that's leaning, and then, I think there was one scene earlier that I feel is important because the tape that HUD is recording over is the same tape that Rob and Beth had filmed their date, or their day out in the town. And when does Rob ask about this? Was it in the convenience store?
About
Was it that
if he's
early?
using the tape over what other tape? Like
Yeah,
his,
he's using the
I thought it
tape
was
that.
actually all the way at the party.
Oh, okay. Well, it is
Yeah.
addressed, and Rob. Okay, I think you're right because Rob does have like a moment where he's like, okay, like right over our memories, why don't you? um, but I do kind of like that that was another piece of storytelling in this film was at different parts of the film as all this chaos is going on takes you away from that into an excerpt of like what happened on their date, like them going to because they were going around Coney Island once they left Beth's place,
Mhm.
and hence the Ferris wheel. But anyways, once they get access to Beth's apartment and they go down, and they see that she's been impaled by this like rebar, almost like Joel status from Last of Us One,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
and
By
they
the
have
way,
the
they totally tried to, like, make that as, like, "Okay, we want you to, like really play it up," and she's like, "Ugh."
she was trying.
She's like, I'm injured.
I'm
Mm,
injured. Oh,
I'm injured."
oh,
Like,
is
and
my
I was
makeup
like, "Oh."
okay?
Yeah, I was like, "That's the best looking freaking crime scene I've ever seen." Um, yeah, no, but she's, like, unconscious. Which a part of me was like, "How is she still alive?" But, if she got impaled and didn't leave, like, it's still holding the blood, so she's probably not bleeding out as fast as, like, if it's out. But
She
obviously, they
wasn't
have
freaking out. Yeah,
she wasn't freaking out, she kinda stayed, left it impaled, kinda like when they say you get stabbed, you kinda, like, wanna keep it in there so that you don't have just a gash just losing blood. They
right.
have their okay, and they have the romantic moment behind this crazy background, and they do the scene where they gotta pull her out, which I'm like, "Ugh, I don't like looking at that," which kinda gives me a squeamish of what they had to do. Um, they get out, and obviously the way you have to get out is back over that little bridge of the tilted building. And of
Yep.
course, they're like, "Hey, you want a view? Like, don't look down, except that here's the giant monster just beelining it for your building." And
That's
I'm
what was crazy, is why does it seem like it was following them?
because it's a movie.
Because the movie could happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sitting there
The
going, with the trajectory, I'm surprised that this monster didn't like, you know, immediately hit the building because it was just beelining straight for it. And so, but obviously they get there and I laugh because Beth's like, oh my God, like, I don't think I could walk. By the time she gets out of this building, she's like, I'm ready to run.
Yeah,
I'm ready to go. And I'm like,
despite the blood loss, they
yeah,
didn't even, like, try to, like, cover the wound at all, right? Nope, I didn't see that.
no, they just I think she kind of holds it sometimes, but yeah, there comes a point where that detail doesn't need that doesn't matter. And this kind of segues into like where I think the biggest challenge, or not challenge, like the biggest kind of critique of this film is, in my personal opinion, the last 15 minutes of this film completely like throws away rationale. And I feel like it really kind of like first time, yeah, you don't really think about it, but if you watch this again, like if you try to watch this multiple times, or even if you're trying to have someone watch it who's not particularly interested, they're gonna pick this last 10 minutes, 15 minutes apart, which I'll let you
Starting with
explain it.
what?
Okay, so starting with so they get out, they get to the well, because it kind of goes into the end of the movie. So I don't know if you wanted to kind of
Well,
share the
because
last
we're basically there, because once they leave the apartment building and get to the, street level is when the chopper comes to pick them up.
yeah, that's where the drop, the kind of pickup point, the what is it, the rendezvous point is. And
Yeah,
so they get to the rendezvous point, and the monster starts showing up, where it kind of creates this urgency. And of course, Lily gets on that. Here we go, Lily. They're like, "Well, come, we're right behind you. We're right behind you." And I'm sitting there going, "Why is Beth not on that chopper?" Like, Lily's on this
first,
chart. Yeah, why is
right?
Beth not first? She's injured. Like, she's losing blood. Why is Lily going first? But it's because they wanna have the couple and the chopper together, which I'm like, "All right, movie, that's all right, Cloverfield, that's fine." So, they do that. They get on, and they start getting out just in time, which that's totally fine. But here's so that's one critique, which is Lily gets on first and not Beth, and I'm like, Beth's the higher priority. She's, like, more critical. When they get in the chopper, they are like hugging like the perimeter of this monster like the whole time, which I'm sitting there going, why on earth is this chopper like being perpendicular to like this monster in the city? At all, because they have, like, stealth bombers drop it's not even like, "Oh, worry about the monster's reach," it's more like
Mhm.
stealth bombers are, like, going in carpet bombing Manhattan, and you're just gonna have a chopper with civilians right next to it. My brain's like, "Why didn't the chopper just go" it's a big city, I imagine there's, like, a million checkpoints or, like, escape points, but they were like, "No, we're gonna go" I think they go north, and they're like, "We're gonna go north, but we're gonna go right next to it the whole time so you could see
I
everything
know!
going on." And I'm like, "Why would you do this? Like, what's the whole purpose of this?" And so and then you're like, "Yep, it's the movie." So it does that, and you're like, "Okay, that's the issue number 2 is like, why are you so close to it when like this is a civilian action?" And then they like do the carpet bomb, which is a risk to the chopper, and then they're like, "Oh my god, we got it." And then I don't know how the monster miraculously grew an extra 100 feet because it
It
just fucking
reaches up.
with its mouth, not its hands or claws, its fucking mouth, and it grabs it. And I'm like, holy shit, how did it do that? So that's 3. How did it reach that far? That's crazy to me after being bombed like that. And then the fourth is they basically that helicopter crashes in Central Park, which is like 70 stories tall of a crash, and they all are able to walk out of it. Kobe Bryant would be fucking livid. And his family, like anyone who's ever been in a helicopter crash, like they're not making it. You're not making that. Like, especially not Beth. Beth's especially not living. And they all just like come out like, all right, we gotta go. And I'm like, are you joking? And like, yeah, Rob has like a probably a broken leg or like, yeah, a fractured leg. But I'm like, how the fuck are you alive
Yeah,
from a
because they pull
helicopter
him
crash?
from the wreckage. They pull him from the wreckage because he can't
Yeah,
stand up right away.
like they walk out of that. I'm like, what kind of airbags were you having? So I'm like, no, I don't believe that. So that's
It's
four.
plot armor, dude. It's plot armor is what it is.
Again, it's plot armor, but it's like consistent plot armor for 10 minutes straight when you've literally shown no mercy for any other character. Like Jason just gets flat. You don't even show him dying. You just know he's dead. Marlena gets bit, explodes. And then, oh, I'm going to fall out of a helicopter from like a skyscraper and I'm going to be fine. And then it gets to the big part where it grabs the camera and the monster's right over him and immediately kills him, which
That part was scary actually, and it was almost unbelievable because how did the monster make it to that how did he make it to that spot without being heard? Because Rob and Beth don't yell out to HUD until it's literally standing right over them.
yeah, that one's a little hard to believe.
That's what's strange.
And also the fact that the monster actually cares specifically about one tiny little person like that.
Literally.
So you're kind of like, oh, that's a little mean, and it kills him, and then obviously, and it doesn't kill Rob and Beth, even though they run to his corpse. Um, but they grab the camera and then they go under the bridge and they have their super romantic moment. This is where the plot starts, kind of, fizzling out or kind of closing and not being a good ending. But
Mhm.
I want to know. So is it that they just like did they nuke Manhattan?
What they ended up doing is they nuked wherever they dropped the bomb on wherever the creature's location was. And I think originally, I could be wrong, but I think originally it was planned to shoot it down in Central Park. Um, and so, like, I think the plan was to lure it there, and where they ended up crashing was right near where the drop zone was.
Mhm.
Um, and even prior to that, I think Lily jumps in another chopper,
Yeah, she gets
right?
away.
She's the only one out of the group that allegedly like escapes. I thought was interesting is once Rob and Beth make it to because they know there's nowhere to run. They end up making their way to like the tunnel, like this little tunnel, and I guess an underpass of a bridge,
Yeah,
somewhere like in Central Park, and they're like, they have the camera like looking at them, and they're like, today is this date, and there's a creature here, and we don't know what's going on, and they're planning to take it down, and we're in the midst of it. And then you start hearing the sirens go off, and it's like, oh fuck! Like now you're done. If you hear those, you're done. And then they just kind of have like that last moment of embrace. What else are you gonna do?
yeah,
Hold your loved one tight, and then you hear the big explosion, and like debris and rubble is like falling over them, and you hear them like kind of like crying out for help, and you hear like the monsters like scream and roar like at the end of it. So it's like, did you even kill it? That's the other
yeah,
question, and we don't know that because soon after this, it cuts to black, and then the previously filmed tape cuts over to where we see Rob and Beth in the Ferris wheel, and they're talking about, like I had a good day, like what
yeah.
you were saying earlier,
And
and
with the
then
well, and with the satellite crashing,
right, yeah, well,
which
I mean, allegedly the satellite, right?
I'm like, okay, like when this movie came out, everyone looked at that scene and went, "Oh, so it's an alien." Like they didn't think it's a satellite.
That's what I
Like
thought. That's what I thought until I
what?
read into it, and they're claiming that it's a satellite that was owned by the company that Rob was working for.
Now, my question is that I think there are sequels to this film.
Yeah,
Like
well, it's kind of see that's where it's strange, and I didn't know if you wanted to cover that, but yes, there is 10 Cloverfield Lane and then Cloverfield Paradox. Even though it's in like the Cloverfield universe, if you look at them um, together and try to group them as a whole, the only ones that make sense is Cloverfield, this movie, and then Cloverfield Paradox, because we see the same monster at the end of Cloverfield Paradox, but this one's much larger. Clover 10 Cloverfield Lane, I really liked that movie. Out of all three, I actually liked that one the most because it was a grounded, like psychological, like thriller, and you don't know what really is going on the outside. And John Goodman's character is saying like, "Well, this is what's happening, and I worked for defense, and blah blah blah. They didn't listen to me." And we don't actually see the truth until the main character of that movie goes up to to like the door to see the outside and see like a woman like their flesh is burned. It's like, oh shit, there is something out there, but I don't know what it is. But the creature in that film, and the ship in 10 Cloverfield Lane is completely different than anything that we see in this movie. So I think ultimately they are grouped as a trilogy, and I think there might be a fourth Cloverfield movie in the works, or at least rumored to be, and that's supposed to be a direct sequel to Cloverfield. So technically Cloverfield 2. But I don't know if it'll actually ever lift off. Um, but I did kind of like that last scene because even though it doesn't end on a good note, at least it cuts
Huh.
over to a happier moment of the two characters that we're left with.
Yeah.
So it's all right. I,
It's like an eerie little ending. You're like, "Oh, I had a good day." And you're like, "What?
yeah.
What fucking day did you have?"
But it is interesting though, that in the production of this film, because it wasn't originally called Cloverfield Paradox, it was originally called The God's Particle. That's what I'm getting mixed up with. But did you ever see that one?
Mm-mm.
That was the one that went straight to Netflix, and I mean, I thought it was okay, um, but I definitely did like. I mean, we both liked 10 Cloverfield Lane. That one was really good.
I don't remember it.
It
I
John
like,
Goodman,
John
and then
Gunman, it's the girl from, like, Scott Pilgrim, right?
yeah, Mary
Yeah, yeah.
Elizabeth Winstead. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 and then I don't know who the other act is Bradley Cooper in that?
No, I forget who the character is in that one. Hang on. I think it might be. I think it's the guy that plays Matt in Underwater.
I think this film was a great, like, time like, kind of piece for its time. You don't go in it trying to, like, dig into it's basically just an action thriller, mystery action thriller that just, like, really its strengths are its moments and its kind of its scenes. Like, it's not this crazy story that you are gonna sit and talk about. It's not gonna be the characters. It's just kind of how they cut and executed scenes and, like, the phenomenon of, like, what the setting was. I think
Hmm.
that's the strength. Like, and just maybe the general concept of, like, it's not, these characters, they are good and, like, okay, they do their job. They're not unbearable where it kills the kind of weight of the movie. It's
Yeah.
just sometimes you watch these films, but the actors are so bad and the characters are so poorly written that, like, it's like every film where you're like, actually, this is really scary and crazy, but, like, the acting and character writing is so bad, like, it trivializes all that. This doesn't do that. Like, you actually take it seriously, and they're not trying to overcomplicate it with this crazy plot. They're just really trying to pull, like, just a good Friday night thriller.
Yeah.
That's all this film
And
was.
and that's the thing. Like anything that can be executed within like a 90-minute time frame, I feel like it's good enough. It's not like a utter like investment, and I want to see what this movie's about. Um versus like a 2.5 hour like slow burn. Like sometimes those are good to watch, but this is definitely nothing close to that.
They
Because you
made
get the reveal of the threat like 25 minutes in or so.
Yeah, this is a tonally controlled film. Like, it knows what it is, like, and it uses its strengths wisely. And it's like, just because, and it didn't be like this, oh, I'm trying to be original. It's like, just because it's original doesn't mean it's good. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
they really were, like, trying not to lean on that. So I just it made me it actually made me kind of reminisce about, like, because this came up when we were in high school. So this was maybe just reminiscing about high school again. Not lasting impressions, but I think again, I mean, the two things that really like kind of stuck with me about this was that one scene with the firefight and just how like emotionally impactful that was for me just as an adult for some reason, and like just how captivating that was, even though
Hmm.
it's like if you look at it on the surface, it's just a bunch of people shooting and explosions. Like
It just
not a lot of scenes can do that without you kind of like seeing through the bullshit. So it did a really good job with that. That scene I think is the strongest scene in the film. And then I think the only thing that they just needed to work on was that last 10 minutes. If they had just like I think that
you
it
think it was a
doesn't,
little too rushed?
not that it's rushed. Well, I think they got written into a corner and then they were like, okay, we need to like have it be this outcome, but like we don't know how our characters are going to get to that spot. So yeah, I think they just wrote themselves in a corner, and it's not that they were like we're running out of time. They're just more like we don't know how to do this with the pacing we've set, and so we're gonna kind of like take some liberties and do some plot armor and make some irrational choices to get to the destination we want to get to. And so like, if they had just maybe spent some more time on that
Uh-huh.
and maybe just sat at the writing room and just was like, "How do we change the script so that it doesn't feel as," I feel like someone watching it, like, it would make it more replayable. Like, I think that when you first watch it, like, I don't remember having that reaction, but it wasn't
Mhm.
until I watched it again where the initial shock is out of the system, where you start being a little bit more critical. That
Yeah.
that's where you see it's kinda like the whole classic case of, like, Avatar, where you're like, "Oh, yeah, it was great. Have you watched it a second time?" No. Like, and for me, it's like a part of a great film is something you wanna watch over and over again, and so if they had just spent more time on that scene, blocking that differently, it might be more replayable.
I will say, some of my favorite scenes, in addition to the one that you had mentioned, uh, something that we didn't already discuss was just the way that, like, as they were firing, Rob is the first one to walk out, and you genuinely see like him like crouch down and like anticipate like falling stuff. Like I thought that was really cool. It really puts you in that moment as all this like
Mhm.
chaos and gunfire is going around. I really did like that. And I like that you mentioned the sound design because that wasn't something I quite thought of until you said it. And I'm like, no, you're right. Like there is a lot going on in that one specific scene.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other scene that sticks with me is Marlena's death. Out of all the deaths in this film, that one sticks to me the most because it was the it wasn't something I was expecting. And when I read into the production of the film and they were talking about like that nectar, what it does is when she got bit, the parasite like obviously had like that nectar already in its mouth. Uh so like once it seeped through the bloodstream and then like through like it's like the body like the human body's like digestive system, it just like blew up. Um and in that one scene where you don't see it actually happen to her, it's behind like a silhouette and you just see the shadow and it implies her blowing up. Like that's hard to watch. That's hard to watch when you just seen this character like do something like to save the day. It's like, okay, that was her arc. That in The
Yeah.
Walking Dead, that was her arc.
Oh,
Before
yeah, where
the character's
they
departure.
start they have their one hero moment, or they start getting a lot more screen time, and I'm like, "Oh, this girl's dead.
This character's gonna die.
This
Just
character's
like
gonna die."
Dale, dude.
Dale, and to be honest, like, half those freaking characters. They were like, "Oh, who cares about this person? Oh, they're talking a lot in this episode. Oh, it's probably because 'cause they're gonna die. They're
Yeah.
probably gonna go."
Oh man. Well, I still think it's a great movie to
Me too.
watch. Like if you have like a creature film and it's October, like what we were saying, like it doesn't check all the boxes for us, but it's good enough to be like, yeah, let's watch this. We can make fun of it. We can make it a drinking game. There's some
It's
stuff to appreciate from this film, but it's not like it's not a Golden Globe winner by all means. And
no, but it's a great suspenseful creature film. A lot of times most of the time creature films go into like the horror bucket. And if there's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to watch a horror film, because a lot of that can be very gory.
Yeah,
I think
or a
that's why,
slasher film. Yeah, a lot of those are the same thing.
you know what I mean? And so this kind of didn't do that. And so it gives it like a unique market that you can hit. Yeah, I think a lot of
Mhm.
people will like it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that has been our discussion of Cloverfield. We hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, take care.
Thank you, everyone.